What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Hangover. I'm Daniel, alongside with me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing, my man? How's it going?
I'm doing good. I'm just glad to have my buddy back this week and ready to talk about the Steelers and how we're going to just roll it back, baby. We're going to stick with the status quo and pray for something different.
You know it. I mean, that's the definition of insanity, and you got to be crazy if you're a Steelers fan, especially if you were expecting a lot of change. It seems like the only change that has occurred is the middle linebacker coach.
And his contract ran out.
Exactly.
So they just didn't.
Oh, Jesus. You know, if you were expecting a lot, please, I hope you weren't holding your breath, because it's not going to happen. A Pro Bowl happened this weekend, though. Or some remnants of the Pro Bowl happened this weekend. Did you catch it by any chance?
No, I was flipping through, and I seen it was like, oh gosh, at that point it was 60-some to 40-some or something, and I didn't see any of the low lights, the competitions. Used to, you had the bench press competition. I remember Joey Porter put up 35 reps one year. It finished second, but he was going up against Larry Allen of the Cowboys, who was probably the strongest guy to ever play in the NFL. So, but, and used to, you had the 40-yard dash, the fastest man race. And I thought that was interesting, or the long distance throw, from the quarterbacks. I don't even think they do any of that anymore. And, but the game is flag football. And they, it's like they really ain't competing. It looks like Nickelodeon designed it, because they got like a ball pit to jump into, and all this stuff. I keep expecting somebody to get slimed, and I'm like, it's just childish. Like the NBA, whoever wins that, the East or the whichever conference wins gets home field advantage in the championship. And baseball has something similar with the All-Star game. Well, if you're going to continue to do it, at least make them compete, make it mean something, so I don't even watch Pro Bowl stuff.
Yeah, I saw some of it. They do have some of the games back. They got the dodgeball with the quarterbacks. They do have this, I guess, accuracy test where there's a bunch of different targets and points and etc. And they've done it in the past. And when Russell Wilson was signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I was looking at some of his highlights, and one of the older, I think maybe 2009, 2011, somewhere around there. Maybe not that old. It's probably like 2016, 2017. Pro Bowl games came up about Russell Wilson, and he was showing his accuracy down the field. This time around, it started off all right. Him throwing the ball there for the Pittsburgh Steelers, or representing the Steelers there. And, towards the end, it seemed like his accuracy kind of dimed down a little bit. Relatively speaking, he is a little bit older, but those were one of the things that I noticed from just recently watching that, because I saw that again not too long ago, and then watching it this time around. It's like, yeah, there's a little bit of a decline there. Obviously, he's a lot older this time around. But did you catch some of the words that he said when they were talking to him about the potential Raiders and Pete Carroll reunion out there in Vegas?
No, I actually did not catch anything he said.
So they told him about Pete Carroll being the Raiders coach, and he said that, oh yeah, he loves Pete and blah blah blah. He does political speak that he always does. And then when they asked him about, if he was going to be potentially interested in, if that would be a good fit or anything like that, I believe his remarks were something to the effect that he's just focused on signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. Now, this is kind of like a double downing, in my opinion. He came out not too long ago, I think it was on the Pat McAfee show, speaking relatively about the about how even the Pittsburgh Steelers started their negotiations already to bring him back. And there's been a lot of talk that the Steelers are going with Fields. No quarterback's been signed yet. Russ is throwing it out there that he may be the quarterback that's returning for the Pittsburgh Steelers. How would you feel, first and foremost, if that ended up being the case?
Well, I've heard two different people out of Pittsburgh, out of the local beat reporters, say that was not the case. That, they might have mentioned something in his exit interview about, we'll be in touch, or what would it cost, kind of getting a feel. But as far as actually any official negotiations, I don't think that they've really said anything to him, to be honest. To me, kind of the title of tonight's podcast, to me, if you look at the teams that were left in the Final Four in these playoffs, in the 2 championship games, and now in the Super Bowl, a young Russell Wilson fit the profile. The modern Russell Wilson no longer does. I'm a huge Matt Stafford fan, but he doesn't fit the profile anymore. And that was with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and 2 of the best receivers in the NFC. A lot of these guys, Sam Darnold, kind of resurrected his career until he was exposed late in the year, just like Russell Wilson was. And he had, Jefferson and Addison and some more great receivers. See, whoever comes to Pittsburgh is not going to have that starting out. They're not going to have the offensive line in front of them. They're not going to have the brilliant offensive coordinator. We don't, right now they don't have a great running game. So you're going to have to, you're starting from scratch here. Now, if it looks like Arthur Smith's coming back, because I can't imagine anybody offered him a head coaching position right now. So if you run him back, at least run Fields back, because that's who he wanted all along. Because if we look, they were 4-2 under Fields. They could have been 6-0 under Fields if the defense would have showed up at all in Indianapolis, and they could have held the Cowboys on that last drive. And during those games, he had 1 turnover. The Steelers had 3, but 2 of them were bad snaps that were not on the quarterback. So, I mean, I think that, to me, it only makes sense to take the 25-year-old. Now, he'll be 26 before the season starts. But you take the young man and you build it around him and see can he run some RPOs, which they didn't do this year. This year's offense was built for Wilson. But next year they can actually build it around Fields and see what he can actually do. And then whoever you put behind him, let's say you get a developmental kid in the draft, make sure they fit the profile, that they can come in and run a similar offense.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to me, it's a no-brainer. You bring back Fields if at all possible.
Right. If those end up being the 2 quarterbacks, I take a step back when it comes to the quarterback position in this quarterback room. I, for one, don't think it's going to be completely overhauled again 2 years in a row. Mm-hmm. But last year, if we were going to be listening to what the coaches and Rooney and everybody else was saying, there was going to be a competition between Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. And there was never any real consideration for Rudolph coming back, especially when Russell Wilson made it out on the open market for the value that he had. When it comes to this position here, no, I'll be honest. I mean, when the Steelers were 4-2 and Justin Fields, and in that last game before Russ came in, I think it was against the Raiders, I was like, man, I want to see what Russ can do. I felt that at that point that Justin was kind of getting a little bit figured out. 6 games into it, the defense was kind of pulling through on some of them. Yes, they lost the game in Indianapolis. Yes, the Cowboys game was a nightmare, and they still had an opportunity to win it at the end. But it is what it is. They lost. But towards the end of that 6-game stretch, I was looking forward to seeing what Russ could do. And when Russ came in and started throwing the ball around, I felt like that was something that was missing out of Justin Fields' game. I mean, one of the biggest things that everybody was saying was, he just doesn't put enough air under the ball. And I'm hoping that he can fix those things. But, I watch what the Steelers do now, what they say, and they haven't signed either one of them. I don't know, man. I wouldn't be surprised given how cheap sometimes this team can be. If they go with Russ, if he ends up saying that he'll do it for some super friendly gig or deal. But if I had to take a choice between the two, I would rather go with Fields, given what we saw towards the end of the year. I think that Fields can protect himself. And as you mentioned, this wasn't something that was designed for Fields. This was designed for Russ. But if they didn't have confidence in Fields then, what gives us the confidence that they'll do it now? They never replaced him. They never put him back out there. if he was showing up in practice and he was doing all these great things down the stretch while the offense was struggling, I mean, I would hope we would have seen him more, don't you think?
Well, the offense was never designed for Fields at all. I mean,
Right.
it was kind of like when Canada left in the middle of the season, that they tried to put together a few plays each game plan to give Pickens some options that weren't there originally. They worked the middle of the field a little bit. That one game against Cincy, they started throwing to Freiermuth. Well, then that's the same way it was last year. It was regardless of who the quarterback is, as long as Mike Tomlin says, protect the ball, be careful, don't turn it over, live in our fears, the offense is not going to improve. It's not. It's just not going to improve. No other team in the NFL plays like that. You watch these other. How many times? I think it was twice or 3 times in the game against the Steelers that Mark Andrews come in and did the tush push. He took the direct snap, did the tush push. We've seen halfbacks throwing the ball for Detroit and throwing to the extra lineman, using him like a tight end. That big old boy they got, Skipper, Detroit line 6'9" and 370, whatever he is. They threw him a couple of touchdowns this year. Well, you see that kind of creativity. And then you watch the Steelers. This isn't even checkers versus chess. This is a Model T versus a Lamborghini. I mean, there's no comparison. And the Steelers and Tomlin seem perfectly fine, satisfied, happy with that mindset. They're not going to sniff a Super Bowl, much less a playoff win, until they take the handcuffs off and remove the blindfolds and let the players play. Let the quarterback be a quarterback and learn. And that's what I wanted this year. I'm like you when Wilson come in and he started throwing the ball around and you see Pickens starting to make progress and some of the guys, we was all happy about it. Now, we didn't take into account the level of the players, the competition they were going up against, but we were happy about it. The problem is that offense was designed for Wilson from the preseason. So him having more success there didn't shock me. But even then, if you remember, a lot of his success was very sporadic. Like the first half, the Steelers were losing in most of them games. And then they come out in the second half and he'd air it out more, put the moon ball, they called it, and hit some big plays downfield. And, it was sporadic. It wasn't consistent. The only game I can think of that the offense was consistently good from start to finish was the Bengals game in Cincinnati. And that's when, to me, I started to believe, and I thought they maybe, had hit a new level and Tomlin was going to back off. Didn't happen.
Well, I think it was Najee who mentioned it in that game, or maybe it was somebody else, that game was designed for more of a running game, and that Russ took over and he implemented the pass against the Cincinnati Bengals, the game that the Steelers did get out there and get up 44 points. That has been something that has been an argument for that we have heard rumblings about coming from the quarterback position in the last few years, that are the quarterbacks allowed to make changes at the offensive line? Are they allowed to change what the play call is being called? And it seems like in that situation, they allowed Russ to do so. It seems like that was the case, that, hey, they let Russ change the plays and let him focus on what he wants to do versus having to stick to a game plan. Now, I know that, it's been 3 different or several different offensive coordinators that have come through. Same head coach. Maybe it's the head coach directing the quarterback to follow what the offensive coordinator is saying and not to go off on their own, versus the offensive coordinator saying, you have to do what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying? I think there might be something there for that. And because
let me ask you something real quick.
Go ahead.
Let's just take into account if I have to put it on Tomlin, and here's why. You have your one of your top 3 offensive weapons is named Justin Fields.
Yeah.
He is one of your top 3 athletes on offense. He has the potential to make a big play. He can run it very well. He can throw it very well. He's not like, he's not limited. There's so many things you can do with him.
Mhm.
Well, where was the creativity? They brought him in on the quarterback sneaks, or they brought him in late when they didn't want to throw it and they wanted him to run for a first down late to try to close out games. When else did they use it? Absolutely none. It was ridiculous. You had one of your top, me and the guys, the homies, we talked about it every week. Well, they got to be a package in there for Fields. It's got to be this week. They had the bye week, and now we're gonna get some Fields package. Never happened. What did we do? The Steelers brought Cordell Patterson, a guy that looks like he should be in retirement, that looked like he was 20 pounds overweight and lost every bit of burst he ever had. That he looked so slow when he come back from that injury, and they kept putting him out there to return kicks. And for whatever reason, I do not know, they would take Harris out, and instead of going to Warren, at times they go to Patterson, and he would lose yardage. He didn't have any burst, nothing. You're going to tell me that Patterson break Fields in, put him in tailback, and let him run it? I'd rather see Fields run it out of the backfield than I would a Patterson. It boggled my mind that they tried to use an overweight, out of shape kick returner instead of using one of their top 3 offensive weapons. I'm sorry, man, but nobody's going to be able to convince me that that's not Tomlin more than it even is Arthur Smith. Now, I know that Arthur Smith brought in his guys, but we all thought it was to help the transition and help the new guys learn Arthur Smith's offense. But he tried to use them a lot.
Yeah.
He used them a lot. Pruitt and Patterson and different guys, and it was a disaster.
No, I agree. I mean, he used his guys, the guys that he brought in. Scotty Miller's another guy that he brought in that we saw a lot of, versus the likes of a Mike Williams and other players. And I think we saw some frustration from some of the players that were out there on the field. I mean, especially George Pickens when we brought him up. Some kind of interesting pop up a little bit earlier today. And, the Steelers were there was a lot of rumors going on around the trade deadline. The Steelers could get Cooper Kupp. Seems like he is going to be a guy that is going to be out there for trade for Los Angeles. They're putting him on the trade block. He posted something on X. Would you be excited to see a Cooper Kupp on the Pittsburgh Steelers offense? Do you think he could move the needle with either Russ or Justin Fields?
I love Cooper Kupp. I love Puka Nacua, as everybody knows. They both are excellent blockers, high effort guys, high character guys, no drama on the field, off the field. That's what I want. I like both of those guys. Kupp had a couple of injuries the last few years. That he's not the player he once was during his offensive MVP season when they won the Super Bowl. The dude is still a high caliber receiver, excellent blocker, great hands. His injury history worries me. And he's due $20 million. If you trade for him, you're going to inherit that $20 million. So, for $20 million, you go a little above that. Can you get a younger guy? Somebody that can grow with a Justin Fields, because Kupp is getting older. That concerns me. The injury situation concerns me. And he said in his press, because he don't like the fact the Ravens are trading him, but he says he still wants to pursue championships. Well, I'm sorry, guys, but it's going to be a little while in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I don't think the perception from the outside of the Pittsburgh Steelers organization is going to be that the Steelers are a championship-bound football team or a contender at this point, given their exit, given the 5-game loss that they had at the end of the season, the complete collapse again for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I can't disagree. I mean, at this point, especially with the quarterback position as big of a question mark as it is right now, I mean, at this point, there is no answer at the quarterback position because there is no quarterback on the roster except for Skylar Thompson. I think he's the only one on the roster right now. And unless he's going to go on Rich Eisen like Mason Rudolph did doing the tour saying he's the number one, QB because he is the only QB on the roster, that's going to have to change here pretty soon. I'll be honest before we go to the break, I'm still a little bit surprised that it hasn't been addressed. the closer we get to the free agency, I mean, how what does that say about the confidence, right? Of which quarterback you want? Don't you think they would have wanted to address this as soon as possible? Or do you think this is going to be something that they're going to go ahead and maybe perhaps even let these guys go out and see what their market is before they sign a quarterback?
I seen a tweet today that said that the estimation is Fields will sign something in the 1 year to 6 or 7 million range. Now I thought it'd be more like 12 million to 15 million, but the report was much lower, is what the estimation. Now, again, a player's worth whatever somebody's willing to pay him. But I think the Steelers, everything the Rooneys do revolves around money. And I think that they're waiting to see what they could get at the cheapest price. That's what they did last year. They waited around till Wilson and Fields become available. And I think that that's what they're going to try to do this year. I think the plan is to re-sign Fields. I would rather they sign Fields now. Then see what happens if another free agent quarterback comes up that would fit that more athletic, mobile, can run the RPO system, bring him in, or again, I like the young man, the second string quarterback, Badgett out of Chicago for the Bears. I'd like to see him come in and then maybe even look at drafting one of these guys in like a 4th round or something.
Well, to me, it definitely does sound like the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be going back into the draft to look at a quarterback. Art Rooney mentioned that. He said it was going to happen either this year or next year. Doesn't appear that they're looking at too many quarterbacks this year thus far. So I anticipate that being a next year situation.
Yeah, hopefully they don't do that again.
Yeah. True story. And so, regardless of whether it's Russ or Justin, if you're looking into next year's draft and having these guys as your options now, knowing what is the options out there in free agency and what's coming up in the draft this upcoming year, probably not putting in a lot of confidence there when you make that type of statement that you're going to not need to go into it next year into the draft and find a quarterback. But let's take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk more about it and more about Justin Fields. We're also going to talk about the newest player out of the AFC North to request a trade. And so we'll get into all that. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon. Before we get back into the conversation, you guys need to go check out the new website, SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Go check out the new layout. Go check out all the new ways of getting around and getting your Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. You won't be disappointed. While you're there, you can check out the audio-only podcast where you'll find mine that airs out on Saturdays. Unfortunately, mine didn't air out this past Saturday. Last week, I wasn't here. I'll just kind of catch everybody up real quick. I had a medical incident, and so I was out for a week, and I'm back now. And you'll be seeing my State of the Steelers come up this Saturday on the audio side only, so make sure you go and check that out. You yourself are going to be on Pump Your Brakes. Is that correct? That comes out on Wednesdays, right?
Yes, Wednesday at 8.
Good deal. Good deal. I know we have some folks that are we have Big G and Sean Gurley in the live chat, and so good to see you guys. Good to see you fellas. All righty. So like we were saying before, a new person, or not a new person, but a big development that's come out of the AFC North, Myles Garrett requesting a trade from the Cleveland Browns. He brought out a letter basically saying that the Browns suck and they're never going to be a Super Bowl contender. So he wants to go somewhere where they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. And then he appreciates what he's got there, blah, 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 but they're not going to be a Super Bowl contender. What do you think about the letter? Do you think he leaves? Do you think this is a money grab? Or do you think this is something different?
Well, it doesn't shock me. Any guy wants to leave Cleveland, especially, when, losing all the time could definitely affect his chances of winning awards. and he's really focused on them awards. So, would shock me if the Ravens don't figure out a way to get him. Ravens just figure out ways to fit people under the cap, and it's like, I don't know how they do it. It's kind of like, back in the day when the Niners could have that star-studded team and still bring in Deion Sanders and still bring in, you're like, how the heck did they do this? Now, of course, back then it was a lot of, guys knew they were getting endorsement deals and stuff like that. So they made a lot of money off the field that way.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to play for championships because they got them more endorsement deals. So there was ways around it. But it still seems like the Ravens get whoever they want. And it wouldn't shock me if the Browns don't trade him and he stays in the AFC North, which I want him somewhere long gone. And maybe whoever he goes, Lamar Jackson will go with him. Because I'd like both of them guys out of the AFC North.
Yeah, he says he wants to go win and play for a championship team. I doubt the Browns give him up unless it's just a ransom, King's ransom, 3 first-round picks, the whole 9 yards. I mean, this will be an opportunity, I think, for Cleveland to kind of perhaps recuperate some of the stuff that they lost by doing the deal that they did with Deshaun Watson, giving up the draft capital that they gave up, those type of things, the financial aspect of it as well. You're going to be able to replace Myles Garrett, who's going to be, he's a high ticketed value. I mean, he's one of the more expensive players in the league. He's up for a contract, so he's going to be wanting to get paid even more as well. And so you can save yourself some money there, get yourself some draft picks, maybe get a little bit younger and a little bit less expensive, and hope in the next, 10 years or so, something else happens. But, I thought it was great. Reading that, I was like, man, this is just another shot to the Browns. They completely blew it. They blew up their entire team. They had a quarterback in Baker Mayfield who isn't the best. One of my buddies is a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. And I call him Barker because he's all bark and no bite. And so he gets I throw some jabs there every now and then. But they had him. He ended up taking his team to the playoffs and things like that. So I just love how bad that the Browns have just kind of imploded from here. I know I've seen some people put it out on Twitter, 95 in the black and gold. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think I don't know if I even want him on the Steelers. As good of a player as he is, the things that he has done and said, the helmet issue, I don't know, man. I don't think I'd ever want Myles Garrett in the black and gold. What are your thoughts of that?
No. I don't care if you get him for pennies on the dollar. I don't want him. Yeah. To me, the Browns made the worst contract I've ever seen in the NFL when they signed Deshaun Watson and give up what they did. Now that's an albatross hanging around their neck. It's going to destroy them for the next 10 years. If they traded Garrett, they could recover from that and get back on a level field. Now you say, well, they're going to trade their best player. They're starting from scratch. Well, what are you giving up? I mean, you win 3 or 4 games every year usually, and even if you don't, you're mediocre. I mean, the problem is, I talk about the Browns and how far away they are from really being a contending team, and I got to be honest, the Steelers the same way. I mean, they're not close. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a couple of big moves. It's going to take some moves out of character for the Steeler organization and the Rooney family, in my opinion, for the Steelers to get back relevant. Because, what it takes to get a quarterback now, unless you get so lucky, it's so fortunate. You have to get really, really lucky to find your quarterback. Or you got to give up a king's ransom to get him. And I have a feeling, based on how long it took to get to Ben from Terry, it's going to be the Steelers are going to have to give up a king's ransom. And that's out of character for this organization. I think there's going to have to be, like I remember Noel having 5-11 season.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to take, that streak's going to come to an end. If Tomlin don't want it to, he needs to go somewhere else or retire.
Yeah, because I don't. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just saying, I don't see it. There's no way you can keep sustained mediocrity, but to get to excellence, where the Steelers supposedly want to be, it's going to cost you.
Yeah, it's going to cost a lot, whether it is an entire season or some players or something, starting all over again. And it's always going to be the gamble. It's the risk. If there was a platform or a game plan, or if it was easy, every team would do it. Everybody would have a Super Bowl, and then in the trophy case, and that's not the case. And so, for me here, though, I think that you're absolutely right. Being here where the Steelers are is in purgatory. It's been something that has been said multiple times. It doesn't have to be more. But, if they end up going with the guys like either Russ or Fields, let's just say it doesn't work out and the Steelers go 5-11, would you still think that the Steelers fan base are going to be calling for Tomlin? Or do you think they're going to give him the opportunity to go out there and get a top 10 draft pick? Because could be the whole planning for Manning, Archie Manning coming out next year.
Yeah.
I've been saying it. I mean, I don't know if he's coming out next year or not, but if he does, the Steelers are hosting, Pittsburgh's hosting the draft. It'd be nice if they go out there, pick up their franchise quarterback in the process of doing so at the same time. Planning for Manning. Would that be a Mike Tomlin thing, or do you think that how do you think the fan base is going to handle it? Because it's one thing to say, man, it sucks to be 10-7 right now and making the playoffs and getting blown out and never getting anywhere, further. Mm-hmm. It's going to suck harder to only win 5 games. I'll be honest with you.
Not for me.
Okay.
I'm old. I went through the 80s, late 80s, 90s. Well, really, once Garrett come in, you started to see it.
Right.
You've seen the plan. You've seen the growth. You see that this team, there was multiple years, Daniel, that the Steelers had the most talented roster in the NFL, but they didn't have a quarterback.
Right.
They had a quarterback good enough to get him there, but then they couldn't win. Of course, they got to the Super Bowl and lost under a guy. I won't even say his name. But you can build a great roster while you're looking for your quarterback. That's actually the best way. When they brought Ben in, they just plucked him right in the middle of a championship-ready roster. And he was 15-1. I mean, he had a rookie season that anybody killed for. And I just think that the roster isn't there. There is no on offense. There's no stars. There's none. I think right now, I'd say to me, Frazier is your best chance of a true star, an all-pro on that offense. George Pickens is not. I don't expect him to be around, but that man does not have the maturity or the character to be a great player. I'm sorry. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit I'm wrong down the line, but I do not see it. There's more to being a great player than athleticism and freaky skills. There has to be the mind and the heart and the character, and he doesn't have those. I understand him being frustrated with some of the lousy quarterback play he's got. But again, the only thing you control is how you act, how you behave, your effort. And then the rest, people will recognize that. If you're out there working your butt off and trying your hardest and handling it like a man, like an adult, people will respect you. Larry Fitzgerald was on some suck teams. Go back and watch some of the bad teams Larry Fitzgerald was on. And you tell me you can watch him in a bad season or you can watch him in a Super Bowl season. You know what? If you didn't know the record at the time on film, you can't tell any difference. The guy gave his all and played his hardest every single game. That's what champions do. That's what Hall of Famers do. That's what great players do. George Pickens does not qualify. So you've got the lowest paid offense in the NFL and the highest paid defense. And your defense doesn't match up. They don't live up to the hype. They're not earning the money. I love TJ Watt, but I'm afraid that TJ Watt's JJ Watt Jr. And when they get older, they get over 30, they play a certain style, they give 120%, they have to be effective. You got a defensive coordinator who doesn't know how to use him, don't know how to move him around. He got chipped to death, beat to death, triple team. He got wore down as the year went on. The last few games, he didn't even make an impact. You couldn't even tell he was out there. And he's only going to be older next year. So, in my opinion, if he wants to, and he says he don't, I don't think he's skipping town or quitting on the Steelers. I think he can help himself to go somewhere where he might win a championship and help the Steelers in the process. Because they're paying too much to like 2 or 3 defenders, and they're ignoring their offensive inadequacies. So it's just there's a lot of big decisions that's going to have to be made, just like I said about the Browns, to recover from some bad decisions, and the Steelers to recover from bad drafts by Kevin Colbert, bad coaching and personnel hires by the Colberts. I mean, by the Rooneys. And I don't see, you say, will Tomlin get blamed? I think all of us, I think the Steeler Nation's smart enough. Now, there's always the outliner, the few fans at the worst, on the far left or the far right. But I'm talking about the vast majority of Steeler Nation would be like, I'm seeing these young guys develop. I'm seeing improvement. I'm seeing hope for the future. And they can accept that. Here's what nobody's going to accept, and I don't think none of us really believe. And that is that Tomlin can develop a quarterback, much less develop an offense, stay out of the way and hire competent coordinators. It hasn't happened yet.
No, it hasn't. And, I think there was that report from Glacier not too long ago when the Steelers ended up drafting Kenny Pickett, where he had mentioned that Tomlin doesn't want to develop a young guy. Doesn't want to have to go and bring in a rookie and show him the ropes. He wants to be with more of a veteran guy. And, from then, looking at what he's done and how he's not developed any of these quarterbacks that he's had throughout these years, it kind of shows that, he's not that quarterback coach. He's the coach that is going to rah, get everybody else going. The quarterback is going to have to hold his own. Ben Roethlisberger, I think he made a comment on his footballing. I think it was more directed towards Matt Canada about how he was basically the offensive coordinator in some of the plays or some of the situations or was doing everything. I think he even mentioned, I shouldn't have put that out there, but he made this one little slight comment that's the way I took it. At least that was my interpretation of it.
I agree with you. Yeah.
And, I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of more of what we're seeing, when it comes to what, our offenses are and why it's been so similar and just so stale. But, as you mentioned, a lot of money focused in on the defensive side. Are you thinking that money needs to be focused in on the offensive side? And if so, where does that money go? I know T. Higgins is a guy that the Steelers have been rumored or it's been speculated that the Steelers might go acquire in free agency. Are there any other big signings that you see the Steelers are going to go throw some money at that could potentially get this offense going? The wide receiver group, I think, has been, George, including him, has been one of the poorest offense or wide receiver groups that are out there. I think that it's been reported that the distance of how far that these receivers are getting open, I think the Steelers were ranked one of the least as far as how open that the receivers are.
Bottom 3.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. So what do you think? Do you think the Steelers spend some money there, or is that in the draft?
Well, they're going to have to do both. The problem is, okay, let's say who's a real difference maker? As you say, T. Higgins. They love T. Higgins. They love T. Higgins because nobody in the Steelers has been able to cover him for years. Nobody. I mean, he eats up whoever. But the problem is they're talking $30 million. And he probably worth it if he had a quarterback to get it to him. See, that's just it. You don't want to have these high. I've always said, if you are not a contending team, you shouldn't have the highest paid anybody at any position. The only place that matters is the quarterback. Now, you find your quarterback, you keep him, the franchise guy. Until then, you got to have balance. Like I was talking on the Pump Your Brakes. You look at Buffalo, they got Josh Allen, one of the best players in the NFL. Who else? Who else is an all-pro? You think of Buffalo and you automatically think that's one of the best players in the NFL. No, They're about scheme. They're about chemistry. They're about execution. They went out of their way to build a solid team with no major weaknesses. And then they let Josh Allen make the plays, feel comfortable. He's in total control of that organization, and they win games. Now, they haven't been able to win a Super Bowl, but, again, they get up there into the AFC Championship game a lot. And, they might win one because Josh is that good. But what I'm saying is the Steelers they don't compare. They have no balance. They're top heavy on defense, even though that's financially, but not performance wise, because the defense fell apart at the end of the year because they get overworked, as you've said. You said last year. Well, Kenny Pickett's offense can't stay out there and defense wears down. Yes. So you got to have balance. So they're going to have to start spending some money. But that's what I'm saying about Cooper Kupp. $20 million? I mean, at this stage of his career, if T. Higgins is $30 million, is Cooper $20 million? I mean, it's just wide receiver salaries have went up. But I would try to get a couple of really good guys for what you're paying T. Higgins. Maybe 2 $15 million guys. There's talk about the Steelers wanting to do a 3-year extension with Calvin Austin. Now, I like little Calvin Austin. I really do. But has he done anything that, I know his contract's up after this next year, but has he done anything that makes you want to sign him to a 3-year deal yet?
I mean, if it's like $9 million on 3 years.
There was more than that's what they were saying.
I mean, I wouldn't give him a big contract. No, I mean, nothing more than like a wide receiver 3 money.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think he's wide receiver 2. I would venture to say that the Steelers have, George Pickens, especially when you factor in everything, because you have to factor in everything, his play. When it comes to when they're running the ball, or when the play is not designed to him, his effort and everything else, he's not a wide receiver 1 either. The Steelers are lacking that wide receiver 1 that
they have nobody close. Yeah,
they go to the security blanket, the Antonio Brown, that you're going to force feed the ball to that person because you trust them no matter what. They don't got that yet. You're right. Are they going to get that in T. Higgins? Probably not. I mean, that's a lot of money. Cooper Kupp's a lot of money. I know that the draft.
If you're T. Higgins, why would you not take a little less and stay in an offense with Chase and Burrow? And I mean, you're going to keep putting up numbers. And I mean, even if it's, say franchise tag me or whatever. I mean, I wouldn't jump ship yet, especially to come to Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin calling the offense. I'm sorry, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, this offense is becoming. Remember when Lamar Jackson's offense, where like they would go and have to pay like a crap ton of money to all these receivers to come, like an Odell Beckham and stuff, because their offense just stank.
And it was just drama all the time.
Yeah, man. I mean, the Steelers are literally on the verge of having that sort of offense where players aren't going to want to come over here. We're like, why are we going to want to go to Pittsburgh where they're averaging 17 points a game offensively? They can't keep the ball on the field and the defense is exhausted. I mean, that's what it's going to turn into. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And
if it hasn't already.
You're right, because like you're saying, if you're T. Higgins, are you really going to choose to come to the Pittsburgh Steelers offense and their game plan, where you have somebody like George Pickens also, who is, whining and crying about the ball as much as he has been, and when things don't go his way, and it can affect yours, because if he's not out there being the decoy on the play that's designed for you, then it's going to affect your play as well. And so I don't know. I mean, I think you have some points there when it comes to that aspect as well. So Super Bowl is coming up this week. Are you excited? Are you going to watch it?
Oh, I'll definitely watch it.
Yeah.
I just, I'm not an Eagles fan in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I have friends that are. I just think that, this could be Kansas City first team, win 3 in a row, and people's already goofy about them. And I still think that they are winners. They know how to win, especially Mahomes and Reed. But to say, would that make them the greatest franchise ever? And to do something nobody else has ever done? I don't think so. This team doesn't look like one of the great teams, in my opinion, in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It's just the modern NFL, and they've had so many fortunate, favorable calls and decisions, and things happen. And I think everybody's just kind of sick of the Kansas City Chiefs. So honestly, I will be watching and I will be rooting for the Eagles as much as I don't want to, just because I don't want to have to hear another year about the Chiefs and the Mahomes and Taylor Swift. Can they win 4 in a row? That would be terrible. So I would rather see the Eagles win it than that. And I can't hardly stomach the Eagles either. But at least I look at the Eagles and it gives me hope because I can see the Steelers with Andy Weidel being able to build something, a similar model.
Yeah.
And the quarterback just has to be in control, competent, and a winner, capable of making big plays at key moments. And that's what Hurts does. I mean, they dominated that championship game, and he really didn't have a great game. It ain't like he did anything outstanding, but he was in total control. And I think that is a model, a blueprint the Steelers should try to emulate.
Yeah, I agree. I'll be watching it as well. I don't want the Chiefs to win here. I'll be honest with you. I don't like the arrogance of them sometimes, them being the Chiefs. There was a situation where there was a pass. I think it was like a backwards pass or something crazy that happened in a regular season game that was called back due to a flag. And Patrick Mahomes was crying after the game, even though they won. But he was crying after the game that the flag was thrown in that situation because it was such an amazing play that happened that doesn't get to go down into the playbooks because it was wiped out because of a penalty. And I'm just like, dude, you're the biggest flopper there is. And like I can't stand you. Like you're the one that cries for the most flags. And then, one gets thrown on you. Oh my God, no, there's too many flags. And
I remember the play you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, ever since then, I've lost complete respect for him and the Chiefs. I'm like, this guy's an arrogant little punk. And, I just see some guy who thinks he don't stink. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I would want nothing better than for them to lose. Will they? I don't know. If they end up winning, will they be considered? Recency bias is huge, right? So obviously, everybody that's out there is going to be calling them the best, there is, and whatever the case may be. I'm just hoping that at the end, it's a good game. I hope it's a fair game. I hope the refs don't get involved. You know what I mean? I think that if there's a situation at the end where, the game gets, there's a questionable call that goes for the Chiefs' favor. Obviously, that's just going to spark more fuel to the fire, more conversation, more topics, more controversy. It's just honesty is going to bring in more money if that ends up happening, to be honest with you. So don't be surprised if it does.
It's funny. I got to mention this. When the Patriots were dominating the NFL, as they dominated the Steelers often, I didn't like Gronk. And I thought Gronk was just, just the biggest idiot because, he had this persona.
Yeah.
But then as he got older and then he retired, and you see that he is a big dumb animal, folks. I mean, that's what he is. I mean, he's, but he is just true to who he is. He's like a big frat boy. He's not malicious. He's just who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've kind of mellowed on him a little bit. Boy, because he ain't dominating the Steelers every time they play. But I can't stand Travis Kelce. Now, I like Jason a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about Travis Kelce. And it ain't just who he's dating. The way he acts, and this season, he took a big step back because he wasn't focused on football. Now, the playoffs, Mahomes starts feeding him, and we're seeing more of what he normally looks like. But some of the taunting and the way he acts after they win and everything, It's something about that dude that rubs me the wrong way. I don't know. I find it that I dislike him even more than I did Gronk.
It's his it's the new hairline. It's weird.
I don't know. Something about him. I don't know.
He's got that new hairline. It's
yeah.
It don't look right on him. Travis Swift, I mean, he's gonna be a Hall of Fame tight end one day with that hair. I'm jealous. That's why I wear a hat. Well, guys, I appreciate everybody. You guys, please hit that like button. Please hit the subscribe button. It's going to be a Super Bowl this weekend, Chiefs and Philadelphia. I'll be talking about giving you guys my predictions on the State of the Steelers podcast. I'm sure you'll be giving your prediction on the game on Pump Your Brakes. Yep. Do you have any final words for everybody before we let everyone go out?
No, just we appreciate everybody here and all the great comments and I know everybody's happy to have you back and so yeah, we're all just thankful and thank the Lord you're doing well and I look forward to this off season and we'll be talking about the Super Bowl next week.
Let's do it. Let's talk about it. And then officially after that, the season is over. The season will be over and we'll be able to talk about free agency and everything else that's coming along with that. So make sure you like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. It was a great time talking to you guys. I'm glad to be back on here. I was fully medicated throughout this entire time, so I don't remember most of it. But
you did good. You did good.
Everybody, Shannon, take us out, my man.